Welcome. My name is Adam Lefevre Hughes. I'm the education coordinator for the Association of Lutheran Church Musicians, and I'm here with Tom Trenney. He's one of our Raabe Prize winners. That is the Raabe Prize for Excellence in Sacred Composition. He was our 2023 prize winner for his piece From Generation to Generation. And we're just so excited to talk to Tom, and we're going to talk a little bit about the piece and just about some of his work. Um, just a quick introduction of him. You know, he's the minister of music at First Plymouth Church in Lincoln, Nebraska, and also associate professor of music and director of choirs at Nebraska Wesleyan. So we're just really grateful to have this chance to chat with you, Tom. Hi, how are you today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for taking this time to visit with me. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah. Well, part of our goal with these conversations is to just, have a chance to kind of see who's behind the music and to see that it's real people that
Mm.
that compose these pieces of music that we love. And I think that it's so easy when we pick up a piece of choir music, it's like, oh well, it's written by someone. It's just sort of there on a page, and I think getting to see that it's real people um, helps, our budding composers and the people who are maybe out there and just need a little bit of encouragement. And so, thanks for doing this. So I wonder, Tom, if you could just start out, maybe tell us a little bit about your background. Like, how did you come to music, or how did you start composing, or what's your musical history?
I grew up in Ohio, and my family is not a musical family, and so I admire friends who always made music with their brothers and sisters, and with their aunts and uncles, and with their parents, and those sorts of things, grandparents. I didn't have that story, but there was a piano in our basement, in our house that my parents had bought from their parents, for $20. And at some point, after playing Atari, I'm dating myself, but after
Oh,
playing some Atari games upstairs, I went downstairs and started to play the melodies of some of those songs that were like the theme songs for the different games.
mhm.
And so that was kind of the introduction for my parents to realize, how can this kid do that? Like they didn't have a category for it. Long story short, I ended up becoming a Suzuki music student and learned piano, you know, kind of by ear first. And I think that, though I didn't understand it at the time, of course, or until frankly a lot later, I think that experience made me less afraid of improvising, and ultimately having the courage to write some of those original ideas down on paper, which I think is what makes you eventually a composer. Um, and so that's been a pretty new part of my life, though, just in the last 10 or 12 years, that I've been writing music, and it's been a great joy to have a new way of communicating my faith and my hope for the world, honestly, and to have a different way of hopefully using the gift of music as a way of bringing people together. And as a composer, this was my first time to have that kind of influence without having to be in the room with somebody.
Mhm.
Um, and I can't tell you what a powerful experience that is, even still. So,
Yeah. Oh, thanks for that. Yeah, I think um, I love what you said there about that, music as communication. And um, I've had teachers who have said, what are you trying to say?
mm,
And just that remembering that even if we're not, even if it's an instrumental piece, but especially right with choral music, there's something being said and deepening that. And it's
mm.
yeah, thanks for saying that. It's great. So we're here to talk about your prize-winning piece From Generation to Generation. I said it was our 2023 prize winner. How did this submission come about? What, or even just maybe tell a little bit about if you can remember. I know sometimes it's hard to remember exact sequence of events, but what were you thinking about, or what was swirling around as you were composing this, and then perhaps even as it got submitted for the prize? I happened to see the dedication at the top. It's for Myers Park Baptist Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I'm a
Yeah,
little curious.
thanks. Yeah, first of all, I'll tell you quickly about the prize part. I got a call one day here in this office from Jim Rindelbaum, and he said, "I've got some good news for you." And actually, I remember kind of chuckling because I thought he was calling to ask me if I would do another webinar or some kind of thing to help, which I would have been glad to say yes to,
Yeah.
of course. But he was
Jim's
actually
really good at those phone calls, right?
yeah.
I've got good news, but it means you have to do something. Yeah. No, we
But
like
to
Jim
my
for that.
yeah, totally. But to my great surprise, I had won an award. I hadn't submitted a piece to be considered for the prize, but the publisher of this piece, Augsburg Fortress, their kind of leader David Sims had submitted it, which was very gracious of him. And so it was a complete surprise to me that I was even being considered, let alone that I could win.
Wow.
That was a kind of phone call you can't even really dream about because
Yeah.
it
Oh,
was just such a gift, and I'm very grateful to have had the chance to visit with the folks from ALCM during the convention that they were kind enough to take me to, and I'm looking forward to being with them, and hope maybe you too next summer, for the next one.
yep.
But the piece itself, was written, as you said, for Myers Park Baptist. They were celebrating a significant anniversary. I'd have to look in the score here to remember which
It,
one.
I
It's
think it
70.
was 70, yeah, 75th. Yeah.
Yeah, and so one of the things they were talking about, as often comes to our minds in a time of celebration like that, is that they wanted to remember the successes of their past, be honest about what kind of church they are in the moment, and also set forward some kind of vision or dream for the future. And you know, as I see it, the one thing we can be assured of is nothing but God's faithfulness, And so it occurred to me that having a song that spoke a text that spoke about God's faithfulness in a kind of past tense on your way to wherever you are in the moment, and then consequently, for the generations to come. And so I kind of cobbled together a text. It includes bits, as anyone would notice, from "Oh God, Our Help in Ages Past," but just little snippets of that text. Um, and it also incorporates, if you kind of sleuth it out, it's not super obvious. I was realizing as I looked at it. In fact, I had forgotten some of the places it was hidden. But the melody of Saint Anne, the chorale, which is often connected to that text in many congregations, that can kind of be sifted out, and it was a driving force in kind of piecing these ideas together. And so I feel grateful that the committee that was looking at pieces, I think, really did feel connected with the storyline and the message, and kind of this, what I hope is a kind of honest expression of how the music carries that message so that it could be felt and understood and heard in a deeper way than the words alone might have done.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. So was it, so it sounds like it was more your choice to make use of "Oh God, Our Help" and that tune, and not necessarily the choice of um the church that
Yeah, I don't recall that being something that was directed. I think it was just something that occurred to me as I was trying to figure out what do you do.
yeah. Well, it's especially kind of interesting, the uh, in 2022 and 2024, ALCM had some conferences by the same name from generation to generation, and these were held on Valparaiso University's campus, um, in conjunction with Lutheran Summer Music, and very much that same. the church of past, present, and future, kind of coming together in a way that uh, speaks to God's faithfulness and constancy. Yeah, I don't think that's a word, but it is now constancy in our lives, and in our world. Yeah, it's such a great theme, and really a good one, I think, for um, that sort of celebration.
Yeah, I think it's important that those simple messages like that are things that we continue to sing about. Um, they they are, you know, we can sometimes get lost, I think, in worship planning that everything we do has to relate to a particular lesson of the day or something like that. Um, Everyone that comes in, if we're honest, everyone that comes into the sanctuary is having some different experience in their life in that moment. And there are simple realities about God's steadiness amidst all of our unsteadiness, and about God's faithfulness in spite of our unfaithfulness, that what we experience comes and goes, but God always is, and I hope that a lot of the music I write kind of focuses on those bigger themes that I think we have to be sure are carried and covered in the things that we sing, and that people hold on to in their minds and in their voices. Um, as I was looking back at this piece, it reminds me a lot of times when people sing my music, some of the singers will ask, why do you use so many different kinds of meters and rhythms and stuff in
Yeah.
your music? And I don't, have no training as a composer, other than having been a music major, of course, and, being a musician, but not directly as a composer. So I don't think of composition as being a theoretical thing.
Mm.
In other words, I don't think of, I want to do this sort of thing with this song, or I'm going to show that I can compose in this way or something like
Yeah.
that. I don't even really know what those things are, to be honest. Uh, but what I do, what I can say is when words come, the words help to inform what the rhythms are. And so I speak to myself over and over again, some kind of text. Oh God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come. And I try to figure out what rhythm, when I say that from my heart in a very, kind of basic human way, the way a person would say I can't, I struggle to write music that has to say, oh God, our help, to satisfy the needs of a
Mm.
particular rhythm that might have come. Instead, so sometimes that means something's in 5/8 or 7/8. It's not because I want people to be brilliant and do rhythms, but it's because I want to figure out how will it make it feel like you're actually thinking of these ideas and saying them the way a human would instead of a musical robot. Um, and that is something that I hope as people would sing my music, if they were aware of that, they would notice, that they would see the fingerprints of that.
Yeah, well,
Hopefully,
and I think that certainly shows up here, right? I mean, I was looking through and noticing, of course, the meter changes, and but thinking about they're not uh there's this the changing in meter and the sort of complex, but it's juxtaposed with that sort of more regular um uh 4/4,
Mhm.
um
Well,
that
yes, and thanks for noticing that too. That's another thing to say. So, as you look at the piece, the refrains are the part we talk about God's faithfulness, in between what is our world like in the past and what is our world like. And so that the more unsteady rhythms that go with the past and the present and the future. I mean, no matter how good God is, we know it's not going to be a steady 4/4 pulse for us, every beat of the day, But so that also turned out, I think, to have a spiritual meaning. And as people, one of the things I can say as a conductor, as an interpreter of music, having composed some now, I try to discover, I feel like it's a little bit easier to get the microscope out and look inside to say, what message was this composer trying to tell me? But based on the things that they did, in crafting and creating the artistry of this particular way of expressing something.
Yeah.
And I hope, as people would look at a piece like this, they could see what the story of it is, and the different choices that are made are intentional enough that they would help express what the meaning of it is.
Well, it's that it's that real humanity piece of it, or real people are making these musical choices,
Mhm.
and remembering that there's something to communicate, something to say, and yeah, it is really striking. I heard this sung at the um 2023 conference in Philadelphia, and it's just so striking. It does move from this between these places of uncertainty and then um, steadfastness, right? That kind of steadfastness of God comes through, and it's such a wonderful juxtaposition, I think, and true to who we are, and who we are as God's children, um, and that relationship. So yeah, it definitely comes through, I think.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I know that you've said that you don't necessarily have a lot of formal training in composition, in particular, other than uh, being a musician yourself, which definitely does count for something. You make enough music, you start to figure it all out. But
Mhm.
I wonder if you could, if you had any advice or um, things that you might say to someone who just needs some encouragement, or you know they they have some ideas but they're a little worried about writing them down, or
Mhm.
what would you tell someone who is thinking about doing some writing?
Sure. Well, I think it's a combination of courage and humility that are essential to, because we have to realize that, you know, there are lots of people who are going to write better music than we do. And who's to say which of the pieces we wrote is our best? If it was the first one we wrote, should we ever write another one? Having said that, there's music that each of us can make and create that nobody else can create in that way, in that moment. And we each have a life experience that we can choose to allow to inform the way that we would write in that moment at that time for that particular congregation, or in this particular space or place, or for these particular people who have just had this kind of experience. And um, I think that should give us permission to go ahead and write something down, and something I would say, um, there are certain pieces that you write that you, after a while, you look back and say, I had forgotten about that one, even though at the time you wrote it, you were pouring yourself fully in.
Mm.
And all of that's to say, uh, it's not the end of the world if something comes out, even if it's in print, that one day you could have done it better, because anybody else who's honest would be able to say exactly the same thing, I hope, because that shows that we grow,
Mm.
that and we do, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I feel also that there are so many people who are willing to help us. You know, um, I have so many friends, as I'll bet anyone watching this does, who play lots of music, who sing lots of music, who conduct lots of music. And I'll bet you there's at least 1 to 10 of them that you could ask to take a look at something you're writing and to give you some honest feedback about how do they perceive it. Now, how they perceive it doesn't make it good or bad, it just gives you an idea of how another mind and heart and soul will see something that you've invested your mind and heart and soul in. And sometimes those people have told me things that have made me get to a part of myself that was deeper than I was allowing to emerge so far. Um, and so there, I think that's something to say is that we can lean on one another in those ways, and we should be supportive and honest with one another in those ways as well.
I love how you said that about uh, sometimes people will share their experience of what you wrote or something, and you suddenly discover something that even just about yourself that maybe was kind of beneath the surface even for you, and that yeah, that's so important. Um, yeah, to have those people. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think, there's also this is a little bit outside the exact parameters of our topic, but some people are so concerned about, is this good enough to be published?
Mm,
And well, I mean, I'm just going to be totally honest with you. There is a lot of poor music that's published that doesn't really have a lot of discernible intentional craft behind it.
mm,
But it's something that the publisher knows can sell to certain kinds of people who are buying things. So we have to remember that, like anything, there's a business reality, and we cannot allow that to perceive our individual value as a person or a musician or a composer. You know, um I certainly have thought that some of my best works are the ones that have not been published, honestly, or that had the hardest path to find somebody who was willing to publish it. And it didn't make me doubt that they were my best works. That's something I can feel. But I can also realize that that's not what that person thought was going to sell, And so we have to divorce, I think, sometimes our personal accomplishment or our personal edification with the realities of charts and graphs and
right.
bottom lines. And I think that's an important thing for composers to realize. We're fortunate, though, to live in a time where there are many paths to get your pieces to people. There are publishers that can do that and help, but there are also self-publishing possibilities available to pretty much anybody if you look it out. And there are even there are even places within organizations that you can sort of half do that. You don't have to get something published, but you can post it on this site and they just get this part of, and so there's all kinds of permutations and ways of getting our music out there, which is different than it would have been when I was 20 years old compared to now when I'm getting closer to 50 years old, and
Ah,
so it's going to be curious to see um, how all of that will shift in the future. Um, so
yeah. Well, yeah, and as you said, that it's that I think the common theme here is it's that courage plus humility that that to put yourself out there and all of that, but also to be able to say, I know, I know where this work stands in terms of my personal ability and edification and all of that, and to not let um, it's a fine line, right? To not let the sort of business machine change that, but then also be willing to let your friends and trusted advisors say, I felt this when
yeah.
I looked through this, and if you say, oh well, maybe that's not what I thought it was doing, and being able to
Sure.
make that change.
Well, yeah, and I think, you know, something that I think about a lot, if you look at several different pieces of mine, I think you wouldn't necessarily, if you listen to them side by side, you wouldn't necessarily know they were written by the same person. Um, some of them feel like they're a gospel style. Some of them feel like this one, that they're more contemporary, and some of them feel more like they're a hymn, that's just set in a particular way. some of them feel more like they're an American folk song, you know, and um, all of that is to say we each have a unique voice, but we can put that voice in many different contexts and characters. Um, and so we have to figure out kind of what does the song want to do instead of I need to be sure the world knows they're hearing me right now. You know, I don't necessarily hope that when somebody sings from generation to generation that they're thinking about Tom Trenney for a split second. I would want them to be thinking about their connection with this God that's faithful through all space and time. And so if our if our idea as it is in music ministry is that the things that we play or sing and worship are an act of service, well, I'm going to tell you what, the things that we write down, if we think of it that way too, I think that gives us more permission to know it doesn't have to be perfect, just like our prelude on Sunday, but it has to come from the heart. And when it does, it God didn't finish God didn't finish writing the world and say it was perfect. It was good,
It was
you
good. Yeah.
know. And that's that's an important thing for us as co-creators in this great uh, in these great lives we get to lead.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, thanks for sharing all of that, Tom. It's just it's such a great thing to hear, and yeah, really wonderful. So as we wrap up here, are you working on anything new, or is there anything else you want to talk about, or I don't
Well, thanks
know.
for asking that. Yeah, I had a chance to write a handful of things over the summer, which felt great. You know, I I end up getting involved in lots of stuff during the choir year and the school year,
Mhm.
and so I don't find enough time to kind of get squirreled away to do lots of writing then. So I appreciate those windows and feel grateful. I suppose also speaking of gratitude, I would just say I feel thankful to ALCM for having an award like this. Not necessarily because I won it, although I feel very thankful for that in particular, but just to remind all of us of the people who do sort of in their own way struggle um, and suffer to to create things that might um, inspire our worship and our service in some way. And I think that you're right. It helps us remember these are humans and you know real people who are trying to figure out how to say what God's put in their heart. And so I'm very thankful to be a part of this tradition and very pleased to be able to spend this time to share some of, you know, my understanding of the whole idea, the privilege and joy and challenge of being a composer in my own way, and also to just say that that is and should be very different from anyone else's whom you might interview because we're all built to do this in a way that's unique to us. Of course we are. You know, we each can love and serve and give in a way nobody else can. And um, while that can be a scary thought, it can also be a really freeing one, um, as depending on the day.
Yeah. Sometimes depending on the hour or the minute. Yeah. No, well, thank you, Tom. And it has been such a joy to to kind of go back and chat with so many of our winners and but also we're just so grateful for um, Bill and Nancy Raabe, who started this, who gave the donation for this prize, and also for the type of work that it has inspired. And it's so as you said, it's just it's all about that communication and communicating what God puts on our hearts. And so thank you for what you do, and thank you for this time together. It was really great to chat.
it's it's been a pleasure. Thanks for thinking of me and blessings as you continue your work.
Thanks. Thanks very much.